Hello everybody and welcome to Song and Story. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all here and say how lovely it is to have you here. On behalf of Kalu and myself, a very warm welcome to you all. Today we have decided to start off with a story from P.G. Wodehouse. Today it is Jeeves and the Song of Songs. And the Song of Songs referred to is in fact Al Jolson's song called Sonny Boy. Another day had dawned all hot and fresh and in pursuance of my unswerving policy at that time. I was singing Sonny Boy in my bath, when there was a soft step without, and Jeeves's voice came filtering through the woodwork. "I beg your pardon, sir." I'd just got that bit about the angels being lonely when you need every ounce of concentration in order to make the spectacular finish, but I signed off courteously. "Yes, Jeeves, say on."
"Mr. Glossop, sir."
"What about him?"
"He's in the sitting room, sir."
"Young Tuppy Glossop?"
"Yes, sir."
"In the sitting room?"
"Yes, sir."
"Desiring speech with me?"
"Yes, sir."
"Sir?" I only said and I'll tell you why I said It was because the man's story had interested me strangely. The news that Tuppy was visiting me at my flat at an hour when he must have known that I would be in my bath, and consequently in a strong strategic position to heave a wet sponge at him, surprised me considerably. I hopped out with some briskness and, slipping a couple of towels about the limbs and torso, made for the sitting room. I found young Tuppy at the piano playing Sonny Boy with one finger. "What ho?" I said, not without a certain hauteur. "Oh, hello, Bertie," said young Tuppy. "I say, Bertie, I want to see you about something very important." It seemed to me that the bloke was embarrassed. He'd moved to the mantelpiece, and now he broke a vase in a rather constrained way.
"The fact is, Bertie, I'm engaged."
"Engaged?"
"Engaged," said young Tuppy,
coyly dropping a photograph frame into the fender.
"Practically, that is."
"Practically?"
"Yes, you'll like her, Bertie. Her name is Cora Bellinger. She's studying for opera. Wonderful voice she has, and also dark flashing eyes and a great soul."
"How do you mean, practically?"
"Well, it's this way.
Before ordering the trousseau, there is one little point she wants cleared up. You see, what with her great soul and all that, she has rather a serious outlook on life. And the one thing she obviously absolutely bars is anything in the shape of hearty humour. You know, practical joking and so forth. She said if she thought I was a practical joker, she would never speak to me again. And unfortunately, she appears to have that about that little affair in the drones. I expect you've forgotten all about that, Bertie."
"I have not."
No, not forgotten exactly. What I mean is, nobody laughs more heartily at the recollection than you. And what I want to do, old man, is to seize an early opportunity of taking Cora aside and categorically denying that there is any truth in the story. My happiness, Bertie, is in your hands, if you know what I mean." "Well, of course. If he put it like that, what else could I do? We Worcesters do have our code, you know." "Oh, all right," I said, but far from brightly.
"Splendid fellow.
When do we meet this blighted female?"
"Don't call her this blighted female, Bertie, old man. I've planned all this out. I will bring her round here today for a spot of lunch."
"What?"
"At 1:30, right? Good. Oh, fine. Thanks. I knew I could rely on you."
He pushed off, and I turned to Jeeves, who had shimmered in with the morning meal.
Lunch for 3 today, Jeeves, I said.
Very good, sir.
You know, Jeeves, it's a bit thick. You remember me telling you about what Mr. Glossop did to me that night at the Drones?
Yes, sir.
For months I have been cherishing dreams of getting a bit of my own back. And now, so far from crushing him into the dust, I've got to fill him and his fiancée with rich food and generally rally round and be the good angel.
Life is like that, sir.
True, Jeeves. What have we here? I asked, inspecting the tray.
Kippered herrings, sir.
And I shouldn't wonder, I said, for I was in a thoughtful mood, if even herrings haven't troubles of their own.
Quite possibly, sir.
I mean, apart from getting kippered.
Yes, sir.
And so it goes on, Jeeves. It's so it goes on. I can't say I exactly saw eye to eye with young Tuppy in his admiration for the Bellinger female. Delivered on the mat at 125, she proved to be an upstanding light heavyweight of some 30 summers, with a commanding eye and a square chin, which I personally would have steered clear of. She seemed to me a good deal like what Cleopatra would have been after going in too freely for the starches and the cereals. I don't know why it is, but women who have anything to do with opera, even if they're studying for it, always seem to run to surplus poundage. Tuppy, however, was obviously all for her. His whole demeanour, both before and during lunch, was that of one striving to be worthy of a noble soul. When Jeeves offered him a cocktail, he practically recoiled as from a serpent. It was terrible to see the change which love had effected in that man. The spectacle put me off my food. At 2:30, the Bellinger left to go to singing lesson. Tuppy trotted after her to the door, bleating and frisking a goodish bit, and then came back and looked at me in a goofy sort of way.
Well, Bertie?
Well, what?
I mean, isn't she?
Oh, rather, I said, humouring the poor fish.
Wonderful eyes.
Oh, rather.
Wonderful figure.
Oh, quite.
Wonderful voice.
Here I was able to intone the response with a little more heartiness. The Bellinger, at Tuppy's request, had sung us a few songs before digging in at the trough, and nobody could have denied that her pipes were in great shape. Plaster was still falling from the ceiling.
Oh, terrific, I said.
Tuppy sighed, and having helped himself to about 4 inches of whisky and 1 soda, took a deep, refreshing draught.
Ah, he said, I needed that.
Why didn't you have it at lunch?
Well, it's this way, said Tuppy.
I've not actually ascertained what Cora's opinions are on the subject of taking a light snort from time to time, but I thought it might be prudent to lay off. The view I took was that laying off would seem to indicate the serious mind. It is touch and go, as you may say, at the moment, and the smallest thing may turn the scale. Well, what beats me is how on earth you expect to make her think you've got a mind at all, let alone a serious one. I have my methods, but I bet they're rotten.
You do? You do? Said Tuppy warmly. Well, let me tell you, my lad, that's exactly what they're anything but. I'm handling this affair with consummate generalship. Do you remember Beefy Bingham, who was at Oxford with us? I ran into him only the other day. He's a parson now.
Yes, down in the East End. Well, he runs a lads' club for the local toughs. You know, that kind of thing. Cocoa and backgammon in the reading room, and occasional clean, bright entertainments in the Oddfellows' Hall. And I've been helping him. I don't suppose I've passed an evening away from the backgammon board for weeks. Cora is extremely pleased. I've got her to promise to sing on Tuesday at Beefy's clean night, bright entertainment.
You have?
I absolutely have. And now mark my devilish ingenuity, Bertie. I'm going to sing too. Why do you suppose that's going to get you anywhere? Because the way I intend to sing the song I intend to sing will prove to her that there are great deeps in my nature, whose existence she has not suspected. She will see that rough, unlettered audience wiping their tears from their bally eyes, and she will have to say to herself, "What-o, the good old egg really has got a soul." For it is not one of your mouldy comic songs, Bertie. No low buffoonery of that sort for me. It is about Angela being lonely and what not. I uttered a sharp cry. "You don't mean you're going to sing Sonny Boy?" "I jolly well do." I was shocked. Yes, dash it, I was shocked. You see, I held very strong views on Sonny Boy. I considered it a song only to be attempted by a few of the elect in the privacy of the bathroom. And the thought of it being murdered in open Oddfellows Hall by a man could treat a pal as young Tuppy had treated me that night at the Drone sickened me. Yes, it sickened me. I hadn't time, however, to express my horror and disgust, for at this juncture Jeeves came in. "Mrs. Travers has just rung up on the telephone, sir. She desired me to say that she will be calling to see you in a few minutes." "Oh, contents noted, Jeeves, I say. Now listen, Tuppy." I stopped. The fellow wasn't there. "What have you done with him, Jeeves?" I asked. "Mr. Glossop has left, sir." "Left? How can he have left? He was sitting there." "That is the front door closing now, sir." "But what made him shoot off like that?" Possibly Mr. Glossop did not wish to meet Mrs. Travers, sir." "Why not?" "I could not say, sir, but undoubtedly at the mention of Mrs. Travers's name he rose very swiftly." "Strange, Jeeves." "Yes, sir." I turned to a subject more moment. "Jeeves," I said, "Mr. Glossop proposes to sing Sonny Boy at an entertainment down in the East End next Tuesday." "Indeed, sir." "Before an audience consisting mainly of costermongers with a sprinkling of whelk stall owners, purveyors of blood oranges and minor pugilists." "Indeed, sir." "Make a note to remind me to be there. He will infallibly get the bird, and I want to witness his downfall." "Very good, sir. And when Mrs. Travers arrives, I shall be in the sitting room." Those of you who know Bertram Wooster best are aware that in his journey through life he is impeded and generally snooted by about as scaly a platoon of aunts as was ever assembled. And there is one exception to the general ghastliness, that is, my Aunt Dahlia. She married old Tom Travers the year Bluebottle won the Cambridgeshire, and is one of the best. It is always a pleasure to me to chat with her, and it was with a courtly geniality that I rose to receive her as she sailed over the threshold at about 2:55. She seemed somewhat perturbed, and snapped into the agenda without delay. Aunt Dahlia is one of those big, hearty women. She used to go in for a lot of hunting, and she generally speaks as if she had just sighted a fox on the hillside half a mile away. "Bertie," she cried, in a manner of one encouraging a bevy of hounds to renewed efforts, "I want your help." "And you shall have it, Aunt Dahlia," I replied suavely. "I can honestly say that there is no one to whom I would more readily do a good turn than yourself. No one to whom I am more delighted to be." "Less of it," she begged. "Less of it. You know that friend of yours, young Glossop?" "He's been lunching here." "He has he? Well, I wish you'd poisoned his soup." "We didn't have soup,
And when you describe him as a good friend, I wouldn't quite say absolutely squared with the facts. Some time ago, one night when we had been dining together at the Drones. At this point, Aunt Dahlia, a little brusquely it seemed to me, said that she would rather wait for the story of my life till she could get it in book form. I could see now that she was definitely not her usual sunny self. So I shelved my personal grievances and asked what was biting her. "It's that young hound Glossop," she said. "Oh, what's he been doing?" "Breaking Angela's heart." Angela, daughter of above, my cousin, quite a good egg. "Breaking Angela's heart?" "Yes, breaking Angela's heart." "You say he's breaking Angela's heart?" She begged me, in rather a feverish way, to suspend the vaudeville crosstalk stuff. "How's he doing that?" I asked. "With his neglect, with his low, callous, double-crossing duplicity." "Duplicity is the word, Aunt Dahlia," I said. "In treating of young Tuppy Glossop, it springs naturally to the lips. Let me just tell you what he just did to me one night at the Drones. We'd finished dinner. Ever since the beginning of the season, up till 3 weeks ago, he was all over Angela. The sort of thing which, when I was a gal, we should have described as courting. Or wooing? Wooing or courting, whatever you like." "Whichever you like, Aunt Dahlia," I said courteously. "Well, however, he haunted the house, lapped up daily lunches, danced with her half the night, and so on, till naturally the poor kid, who's quite off her oats about him, took it for granted that it was only a question of time before he suggested that they should feed for life out of the same crib. And now he's gone and dropped her like a hot brick, and I hear he's infatuated with some gal he met at a Chelsea tea party, a girl named, what was it? Cora Bellinger? How do you know?" "She was lunching here today." "He brought her?" "Yes." "Well, what's she like?" "Pretty massive in shape, a bit on the lines of the Albert Hall." "Did he seem very fond of her?" He couldn't take his eyes off the chassis." The modern young man," said Aunt Dahlia, "is a congenital idiot and wants a nurse to lead him by the hand and some strong attendant to kick him regularly at intervals at a quarter of an hour." I tried to point out the silver lining. "Now, if you ask me, Aunt Dahlia," I said, "I think Angela is well out of it. This Glossop is a tough baby. One of London's toughest. I was trying to tell you just now what he did to me one night at the Drones. First, having got me in a sporting mood with a bottle of the ripest, he betted I wouldn't swing myself across the swimming baths by the ropes and rings. I knew I could do it in my head, so I took him on, exulting in the fun, so to speak. And when I'd done half the trip, and was going to be as strong as damn it, I found he had looped the last rope back against the rail, leaving me no alternative but to drop into the depths and swim ashore in correct evening costume." "He did?" "He certainly did. It was months ago, and I haven't really got quite dry yet. You wouldn't want your daughter to marry a man capable of that." "On the contrary, you restore my faith in the young hound. I see that there must be lots of good in him after all, and I want this Bellinger business broken up, Bertie." "How?" "I don't care how. Any way you please." "But what can I do?" "Do? Why, put the whole thing before your man Jeeves. Jeeves will find a way. One of the most capable fellows I ever met. Put the thing squarely up to Jeeves and tell him to let his mind play round this topic." "There may be something in what you say, Aunt Dahlia," I said thoughtfully. "Of course there is," said Aunt Dahlia. "A little thing like this will be child's play to Jeeves. Get him working on it, and I'll look in tomorrow to hear the result." With which she biffed off, and I summoned Jeeves to the presence. "Jeeves," I said, "have you heard all?" "Yes, sir." I thought you would. My Aunt Dahlia has what you might call a carrying voice. Has it ever occurred to you that if all other sources of income fail, she could make a living calling the cattle home after the Sands of Dee? I had not considered the point, sir, but no doubt you are right. Well, how do we go? What's your reaction? I think we should do our best to help and assist. Yes, sir. I'm very fond of my Aunt Dahlia, and I'm fond of my cousin Angela, fond of them both, if you get my drift. When the misguided gal finds to attract her in what the misguided girl finds to attract her in young Tuppy, I cannot say, Jeeves, and you cannot say. But apparently she loves the man, which shows it can be done, a thing I wouldn't have believed myself, and is pining away like patience on a monument, sir. Like patience, as you very shrewdly remarked, on a monument, yes. We must cluster around. Bend your brain to the problem, Jeeves. It is one that will tax you to the uppermost. Aunt Dahlia blew in on the morrow, and I rang the bell for Jeeves. He appeared looking brainier than one could have believed possible. Sheer intellect shining from every feature, and I could see at once that the engine had been turning over. Speak, Jeeves, I said. Very good, sir. You have brooded? Yes, sir. With what success? I have a plan, sir, which I fancy may produce satisfactory results. Well, let's have it, said Aunt Dahlia. In affairs of this description, madam, the first essential is to study the psychology of the individual. The what of the individual? The psychology, madam. He means the psychology, I said. And by psychology, Jeeves, you imply the natures and dispositions of the principles in the matter, sir. You mean what they're like? Precisely, sir. Does he talk like this when he's alone, Bertie? Asked Aunt Dahlia. Sometimes, occasionally, and on the other hand, sometimes not. Proceed, Jeeves. Well, sir, if I may say so, one thing that struck me most forcibly about Mrs. Bellinger, when she was under my observation, was that hers was a somewhat hard and intolerant nature. I could envisage Miss Bellinger applauding success. I could not so easily see her pitying and sympathising with failure. Possibly you will recall, sir, her attitude when Mr. Glossop endeavoured to light her cigarette with his automatic lighter. I thought I detected a certain impatience in his ability to produce the necessary flame. True, Jeeves, she ticked him off. Precisely, sir. Let me get this straight, said Aunt Dahlia, looking a bit fogged. You think that if he goes on trying to light her cigarettes with his automatic lighter long enough, she will eventually get fed up and hand him the mitten? Is that the idea? I merely mentioned the episode, madam, as an indication of Miss Bellinger's somewhat ruthless nature. Ruthless, I say, is right. The Bellinger is hard-boiled. Those eyes, that chin, I could read them. A woman of blood and iron, if ever there was one. Precisely, sir. I think, therefore, that should Miss Bellinger be a witness of Mr. Glossop appearing to take advantage or to disadvantage in public, she would cease to entertain affection for him in the event, for instance, of his failing to please the audience on Tuesday with his singing. I saw daylight. By Jove, Jeeves, you mean if he gets the bird, all will be off? I shall be greatly surprised if such a case is not, sir. I shook my head. We cannot leave this to chance, Jeeves. Young Tuppy singing Sonny Boy is the likeliest prospect for the bird that I can think of. But no,
You must see for yourself that we can't simply trust to luck. We need not trust to luck, sir. I would suggest that you approach your friend, Mr. Bingham, and volunteer your services as a performer at this forthcoming entertainment. It could readily be arranged that you sang immediately before Mr. Glossop. I fancy, sir, that if Mr. Glossop were to sing Sonny Boy directly after you too had sung Sonny Boy, the audience would respond satisfactorily. By the time Mr. Glossop began to sing, they would have lost their taste for that particular song and would express their feelings warmly. Jeeves, said Aunt Dahlia. You're a marvel. Thank you, madam. Jeeves, I said, you're an ass. What do you mean he's an ass? Said Aunt Dahlia hotly. I think it's the greatest scheme I've ever heard. Me sing Sonny Boy at Beefy Bingham's clean, bright entertainment? I can see myself. You sing it daily in your bath, Sir Mr. Wooster, said Jeeves, turning to Aunt Dahlia. Has a pleasant, light baritone voice. I bet he has, said Aunt Dahlia. I froze the man with a look. Between singing Sonny Boy in one's bath, Jeeves, and singing it before a full hall full of assorted blood orange merchants and their young, there is a substantial difference. Bertie, said Aunt Dahlia, you'll sing and you'll like it. I will not. Bertie, nothing will Bertie, you will sing Sonny Boy on Tuesday, the 3rd prox, and sing it like a lark at sunrise, or may an aunt's curse. I won't. Think of Angela. Dash Angela. Bertie. No, I mean, hang it all, you won't. No, I won't. That is your last word on it? It is. Once and for all, Aunt Dahlia, nothing will induce me to let out so much as a single note. And so, that afternoon, I sent a prepaid wire to Beefy Bingham, offering my services in the cause, and by nightfall the thing was fixed up. I was billed to perform next but one after the intermission. Following me came Tuppy, and immediately after him Miss Cora Bellinger, the well-known operatic soprano. Jeeves, I said that evening, and I said it coldly, I shall be obliged if you will pop round to the nearest music shop and procure me a copy of Sonny Boy. It will now be necessary for me to learn both verse and refrain. Of the trouble and nervous strain which this will involve, I say nothing. Very good, sir. But this I do say. I had better be starting immediately, sir, or the shop will be closed. Ha, I said, and it meant to sting. Although I had steeled myself to the ordeal before me and had set out full of calm, quiet courage which makes men so desperate deeds with careless smiles, I must admit that there was a moment, just after I had entered the Oddfellows' Hall at Bermondsey East and had run an eye over the assembled pleasure-seekers, when it needed all the bulldog pluck of the Woosters to keep me from calling it a day and taking a cab back to civilization. The clean, bright entertainment was in full swing when I arrived, and somebody who looked as if he might be a local undertaker was reciting Gunga Din, and the audience, though not exactly yiking at the full technical sense of the term, had a grim look, which I didn't like at all. The mere sight of them gave me the sort of feeling Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego must have had when preparing to enter the burning fiery furnace. Scanning the multitude, it seemed to me that they were, for the nonce, suspending judgments. Did you ever tap on the door of one of those New York speakeasy places and see the grill snap back and the face appear? There's one long, sudden, silent moment when its eyes are fixed on yours and all your life seems to rise up before you,
Then you say that you are a friend of Mr. Zinzenheimer, and he told you that they would treat you right if you mentioned his name and the strain relaxes. Well, these costermongers and whelk stallers appeared to me to be looking just like that face. Start something, they seemed to say, and they would know what to do about it. And I couldn't help feeling that my singing Sonny Boy would come, in their opinion, under the head of starting something. "A nice full house, sir," said a voice at my elbow, watching the proceedings with an indulgent eye. "Oh, you here, Jeeves?" I said coldly. "Yes, sir. I have been present since the commencement." "Oh, any casualties yet?" "Sir?" "You know what I mean, Jeeves," I said sternly. "And don't pretend you don't. Anybody got the bird yet?" "Oh, no, sir." "I shall be the first, you think?" "No, sir. I see no reason to expect such a misfortune. I anticipate that you will be well received." A sudden thought struck me. "And you think everything will go according to plan?" "Yes, sir." "Well, I don't know," I said, "and I'll tell you why I don't. I've spotted a flaw in your beastly scheme." "A flaw, sir?" "Yes. Do you suppose for a moment that if when Mr. Glossop hears me singing that dashed song, he'll come calmly on a minute after me and sing it too? Use your intelligence, Jeeves. He will perceive the chasm in his path and pause in time. He will back out and refuse to go on at all." "Mr. Glossop will not hear you sing, sir. At my advice, he has stepped across the road to the Jug and Bottle, an establishment immediately opposite the hall, and he intends to remain there until it is time for him to appear on the platform." "Oh," I said. "If I might suggest it, sir, there is another house named the Goat and Grapes, only a short distance down the street. I think it might be a judicious move." "If I were to put a bit of a custom in their way, it would ease the nervous strain of waiting, sir." I had not been feeling any too pleased with the man for having let me in for this ghastly binge, but at these words, I'm bound to say, my austerity softened a trifle. He was undoubtedly right. He had studied the psychology of the individual, and it had not led him astray. A quiet 10 minutes at the Goat and Grapes was exactly what my system required. To buzz off there and inhale a short measure of swift whiskey and soda was the Bertram Wooster, the work of a moment. The treatment worked like magic. What they had put into that stuff besides vitriol I could not have said, but it's completely altered my outlook on life. That curious gulpy feeling passed. I was no longer conscious of the sagging sensation at my knees. The limbs seemed to quiver gently, the tongue became loosened in its socket, and the backbone stiffened, pausing merely to order and swallow another of the same. I bade the barmaid a cheery good night, nodded affably to two of fellas in the bar whose faces I liked, and came prancing back to the hall ready for anything. And shortly afterwards, I was on the platform with about 1,000,000 bulging eyes goggling up at me. There was a rummy sort of buzzing in my ears, and though through the buzzing I could have heard the sound of a piano starting to tinkle, and commencing my soul to God, I took a long, deep breath and charged in. Well, it was a close thing. The whole incident is a bit blurred, but I seem to recollect a kind of murmur as it hit the refrain. I thought at the time it was an attempt on the part of the many-headed to join in the chorus, and at the moment it rather encouraged me. I passed the thing over the larynx with all the vim of my disposal, hit the high note and off gracefully into the wings. I didn't come on again to take a bow. I just receded and oiled round to where Jeeves waited for me among the standees at the back. "Well, Jeeves," I said, anchoring myself at this side and brushing the honest sweat from the brow. They didn't rush the platform. No, sir. But you can spread it about. That's the last time I perform outside my bath. My swan song, Jeeves. Anybody who wants to hear me in future must present himself at my bathroom door and shove his ear against the keyhole. I may be wrong, but it seemed to me that towards the end of it, they were hotting up a trifle. The bird was hovering in the air. I could hear the beating of its wings. I did detect a certain restlessness, sir, in the audience. I fancy they have lost their taste for that particular melody. Eh? Oh, I should have informed you earlier, sir, that the song had already been sung twice before you arrived. What? Yes, sir, once by a lady and once by a gentleman. It's a very popular song, sir. I gaped at the man. That with this knowledge he could calmly have allowed the young master to have stepped out into the jaws of death, so to speak, paralysed me. It seemed to show that the old feudal spirit had passed away completely. I was about to give him my views on the matter, in no uncertain fashion, when I was stopped by the spectacle of young Tuppy lurching on the platform. Young Tuppy had the unmistakable air of a man who has recently been round to the jug and bottle. A few cheery cries of welcome, presumably from some of his backgammon-playing pals, who felt that blood was thicker than water, had the effect of causing the genial smile on his face to widen, till it nearly met at the back. He was plainly feeling about as good as a man can feel, and still remain on his feet. He waved a kindly hand to his supporters, and bowed in a regal sort of manner, rather like an Eastern monarch acknowledging the plaudits of the mob. Then the female at the piano struck up the opening bars of Sunny Boy, and Tuppy swelled like a balloon, clasped his hands together, rolled his eyes up at the ceiling in a manner denoting soul, and began. I think the populace was too stunned for the moment to take immediate steps. It may seem incredible, but I give you my word that young Tuppy got right through the verse without so much of a murmur. Then they all seemed to pull themselves together. A costermonger roused is a terrible thing. I could never have seen the proletariat really stirred up before, and I'm bound to say it rather awed me. I mean, it gave you some idea of what it must have been like during the French Revolution. From every corner of the hall there proceeded simultaneously the sort of noise which you hear, they tell me, at one of those East End boxing places when the referee disqualifies the popular favourite and makes a quick dash for life. And then they passed beyond mere words and began to introduce the vegetable motive. I don't know why, but somehow I got it into my head that the first thing thrown at Tuppy would be a potato. One gets these fancies. It was, however, as a matter of fact, a banana, and I saw in an instant that the choice had been made by wiser heads than mine. These blokes, who have grown up from childhood in the knowledge of how to treat a dramatic entertainment that doesn't please them, are aware of a sort of instinct, just what to do for the best. And the moment I saw the banana splash on Tuppy's front shirt, I realised how infinitely more effective and artistic it was than any potato could have been. Not that the potato school of thought had not had its supporters. As the proceedings warmed up, I noticed several intelligent-looking fellows who threw nothing else. The effect on young Tuppy was rather remarkable. His eyes bulged, and his hair seemed to stand up, and yet his mouth went on opening and shutting, and you could see that in a dazed, automatic way he was singing Sunny Boy. Then, coming out of his trance, he began to pull for the shore with some rapidity. The last seen of him, he was beating a tomato to the exit by a short head. Presently, the tumult and this shouting died. I turned to Jeeves. "Painful, Jeeves," I said. "What would you do?" Yes, sir. The surgeon's knife, what? Precisely, sir. Well, with this happening beneath our eyes, I think we may definitely consider the Glossop Bellinger romance off. Yes, sir. At this point, old Beefy Bingham came up onto the platform. Ladies and gentlemen, said old Beefy. I suppose that he was about to rebuke his flock for his recent expression of feeling, but such was not the case. No doubt he was accustomed by now to the wholesome give and take of these clean, bright entertainments, and had ceased to think it worthwhile to make any comment when there was a certain liveliness. Ladies and gentlemen, said old Beefy, the next item on the programme was to have been songs by Miss Cora Bellinger, the well-known operatic soprano. I've just received a telephone message from Miss Bellinger saying that her car has broken down. She is, however, on her way here in a cab and will arrive shortly. Meanwhile, our friend Mr. Enoch Simpson will recite Dangerous Dan McGrew. I clutched at Jeeves. Jeeves, you heard? Yes, sir. She wasn't there? No, sir. She saw nothing of Tuppy's Waterloo? No, sir. The whole bally scheme has blown a fuse? Yes, sir. Oh, come, Jeeves, I said, and those standing by wondered, no doubt, what had caused that clean-cut face to grow so pale and set. I've been subjected to a nervous strain unparalleled since the days of my early martyrs. I have lost pounds in weight and permanently injured my entire system. I've gone through an ordeal, the collection of which will make me wake up screaming in the night for months to come. And all for nothing. Let us go. If you have no objections, sir, I would like to witness the remainder of the entertainment. Now, suit yourself, Jeeves, I said. Personally, my heart is dead, and I'm going to look in the Goat and Grapes for another of their cyanide specials, and then home. It must have been about 10:30, and I was in the old sitting room, somberly sucking down a more or less final restorative, when the front door bell rang, and there on the mat was young Tuppy. He looked like a man who had passed through some great experience, and some face-to-face with his soul. He had the beginnings of a black eye. "Oh, hello, Bertie," said young Tuppy. He came in and hovered about the mantelpiece, as he were looking for things to fiddle with and break. "I've just been singing at Bertie Bingham's entertainment," he said after a pause. "Oh, and how did it go?" "Oh, like a breeze. Held them spellbound. Knocked them, eh? Cold," said Tuppy. "Not a dry eye." And this, mark you, a man who had not a good upbringing and had no doubt spent years at his mother's knee being taught to tell the truth. I suppose Miss Bellinger is pleased." "Oh, yes, delighted." So now everything's all right?" "Oh, quite." Tuppy paused. "On the other hand, Bertie." "Yes?" "Well, I've been thinking things over, and somehow I don't think Miss Bellinger is really the mate for me, after all." "You don't?" "No, I don't." "Why don't you?" "Oh, I don't know. These things sort of flash on you. I respect Miss Bellinger and Bertie. I admire her, but, I can't help feeling now that a sweet, gentle girl, or like your cousin Angela, for instance, Bertie, would, in fact, what I came round for was to ask if you would phone Angela and find out how she reacts to the idea of coming with me tonight to the Berkeley for a segment of supper and a spot of dancing." "Oh, go ahead, there's the phone." No, I'd rather you asked her, Bertie. What with one thing and another, if you pave the way, you see, there's just the chance that she may be, know how misunderstandings occur, and, what I'm driving at, Bertie, old man, is that I'd rather you surged round and did a bit of paving, if you don't mind. I went to the phone and called up Aunt Dahlia's. "She says, come round right along," I said. "Tell her," said Tuppy in a devout sort of voice, "that I will be with her in something under a couple of ticks." He had barely biffed when I heard a click in the keyhole and a soft padding in the passage. "Jeeves," I called. "Sir?" said Jeeves, manifesting himself. "Jeeves, a remarkable rummy thing has happened. Mr. Glossop has been here. He tells me that it's all off between him and Miss Bellinger." "Yes, sir." "You don't seem surprised." "No, sir. I confess I had anticipated some such eventuality." "Eh? What gave you that idea?" "It came to me, sir, when I observed Miss Bellinger strike Mr. Glossop in the eye." "Strike him?" "Yes, sir." "In the eye?" "The right eye, sir." I clutched the brow. What on earth made her to do that? "I fancy she was a little upset, sir, at the reception accorded to her singing." "Great Scott! Don't tell me she got the bird too." "Yes, sir." "But why? She's got a red-hot voice." "Yes, sir, but I think the audience resented her choice of song." "Jeeves!" Reason was beginning to do a bit of tottering on its throne. "You aren't going to stand there and tell me that Miss Bellinger sang 'Sonny Boy'?" "Yes, sir." And rashly, in my opinion, brought a large doll onto the platform to sing it to. The audience affected to mistake it for a ventriloquist's dummy, and there was some little disturbance. "But Jeeves, what a coincidence!" "Not altogether, sir." I ventured to take the liberty of accosting Miss Bellinger on her arrival at the hall and recalling myself to her recollection. I then said that Mr. Glossop had asked me to request her that, as a particular favour to him, the song being a favourite of his, she would sing Sonny Boy, and when she found that you and Mr. Glossop had also sung the song immediately before her, I rather fancy that she supposed that she would have been made the victim of a practical pleasantry by Mr. Glossop. Will there be anything further?" "No, thank you." "Good night, Jeeves." "Good night, sir."
Are you lonesome tonight? Do you miss me tonight? Are you sorry we...
Well, that actually concludes the reading of the particular story by P.G. Wodehouse. Enjoy the music, and I hope you enjoyed the story. Thank you for coming.
Climb up on my knees, sonny boy. Boy, you're only 3.